Imagine for a moment that you are walking down a busy street. It's a pleasant afternoon, the sun is shining, and the winter air feels unusually warm. You hear a low rumble in the distance. It sounds like a subway train approaching, or maybe thunder. But the sky is clear, and there are no tracks nearby. Suddenly, the ground beneath your feet starts to shake violently. You look up, expecting to see smoke or a storm. Instead, you see a wall. A literal wall of dark, thick liquid, standing 25 feet high, crashing through the streets faster than a car can drive. It smashes into buildings, crumples steel like paper, and swallows everything in its path. Now, if I told you this was a scene from a movie, you'd believe me. But it's not. This isn't water, and it isn't lava. It is 2 million gallons of sticky, suffocating syrup. This sounds impossible, right? Maybe even a little funny? But this is the true story of the day a major American city was drowned in sugar. It is one of the most bizarre, yet heartbreaking moments in American history. Today, we are going to uncover the sticky, dark truth behind the Great Molasses Flood and see how a mix of greed and bad engineering created a disaster that no one saw coming. To really understand how this happened, we have to travel back to the north end of Boston in the year 1915. The world was a very different place. World War I was raging across Europe, and the United States was ramping up its industrial production. Now, you might be wondering, what does molasses have to do with war? Well, molasses isn't just for cookies. When you ferment it, you get industrial alcohol. And back then, alcohol was the key ingredient for making smokeless gunpowder and explosives. So, molasses was liquid gold. Enter the Purity Distilling Company. They saw a massive opportunity to make a fortune by supplying alcohol for the war effort. But they had another problem, or opportunity, depending on how you look at it. Rumors were spreading that the U.S. government was about to ban alcohol completely. We know this today as prohibition. The company wanted to produce as much rum and alcohol as humanly possible before the law shut them down. They needed a place to store millions of gallons of molasses, and they needed it yesterday. They found a plot of land near the harbor in Boston's North End. Now, it's important to remember that this wasn't an empty field. This was a crowded, working-class neighborhood. It was filled with Italian immigrants, families, and dockworkers. It was a place where Boston history was lived by regular people trying to build a new life. The company hired a man named Jell to oversee the project. And this is where the moral story begins to take a dark turn. Jell was a treasurer. He was good with money, but he was not an engineer. He couldn't read a blueprint, and he didn't know the first thing about structural safety. But he knew how to cut costs. Under his supervision, a massive steel tank, 50 feet tall and 90 feet wide, was built in record time. To save money, Jell used thinner steel than what was recommended. And here's the most shocking part. they skipped the safety tests. Usually, when you build a tank this big, you fill it with water first to see if it leaks. But water costs money, and testing takes time. So, they skipped it. They built a time bomb in the middle of a neighborhood, and they didn't even check to see if the fuse was lit. Almost immediately, the tank started to show signs of failure. From the very first day it was filled, the tank groaned. Residents living nearby said that at night, they could hear the metal beast creaking and moaning, as if it was struggling to hold the weight. It leaked so badly that the rivets, the bolts holding the tank together, were constantly dripping. It became a normal part of life in the neighborhood. Local children would actually run up to the tank with little cups and sticks to collect the sticky liquid oozing out. It was like a free candy shop for them. People complained. Workers at the site told the owners that the tank looked dangerous. They warned that a catastrophe was coming. So, what did the Purity Distilling Company do? Did they empty the tank? Did they reinforce the steel? No. They painted the tank brown. They painted the steel the exact same color as the molasses so that the leaks wouldn't be visible to the public. It was the ultimate example of out of sight, out of mind. They chose profit over human lives, covering up a deadly problem with a fresh coat of paint. This act of negligence is a key lesson in industrial safety history. Fast forward to January 15, 1919. It had been a bitter cold winter in Boston. The molasses inside the tank had chilled and thickened. But on this specific Wednesday, the weather went crazy. The temperature jumped from just 2 degrees to over 40 degrees Fahrenheit in a matter of hours. Here is a bit of science for you: when molasses warms up, it expands. Not only that, but the fresh shipment of molasses they had just pumped in was fermenting. This created carbon dioxide gas, building up pressure inside the tank like a shaken soda bottle. The physics of the flood were being set in motion. The tank was overfilled, the steel was brittle from the cold, and the pressure was rising. It was 12:40 p.m. Lunchtime. The streets were full of workers eating sandwiches and children walking home. Suddenly, the rivets started to pop. Witnesses later described the sound as machine gun fire. Rat-tat-tat-tat. The bolts shot out of the tank with such force that they embedded themselves in nearby wooden houses. And then, the earth shook. The entire side of the tank ripped open. It didn't just spill, it exploded. The collapse was so violent that the suction pulled a nearby house completely off its foundation. 2.3 million gallons of molasses were unleashed all at once. Now, we have a saying, slow as molasses. We think of it as a slow-moving, harmless goo. But that is only true when it drips from a spoon. When millions of gallons are released by gravity, it behaves differently. It formed a wave, a molasses tsunami, that reached 25 feet high and moved at 35 miles per hour. You cannot outrun 35 miles per hour. The wave hit the streets with the force of a freight train. It demolished buildings. It crushed freight cars. There was a firehouse nearby, Engine 31. The wave hit it so hard that the building was knocked off its foundation, and the second floor collapsed onto the first, trapping the firefighters inside. An elevated train track ran nearby. The wave hit the steel support beams and twisted them like pretzels. A train conductor, seeing the brown wall of doom approaching, slammed on the brakes just in time, leaving the train dangling over the edge of the destruction. It was a scene of total urban destruction. The cleanup took months. Firefighters tried to wash the streets with fresh water, but it didn't work. The water just slid over the syrup. They eventually had to use salt water from the harbor to cut through the sugar. They say Boston Harbor was brown until the summer. But the story doesn't end there. The aftermath of this disaster led to one of the most significant legal battles in history. The Purity Distilling Company didn't say sorry. Instead, they tried to blame anarchists. They claimed terrorists had planted a bomb. They said, "Our tank was strong, someone blew it up." But the people of Boston fought back. They launched a massive class action lawsuit. If you look up videos on this topic, like the Boston Molasses disaster by other creators, you will see the visual scale of the damage. But the real hero of this story is the legal victory. The court appointed an auditor to hear the case. For 3 years, they listened to engineers, metallurgists, and witnesses. It was uncovered that Arthur Jell, the man who tried to save money, was responsible. The court ruled that the tank failed due to structural weakness and negligence. The company was forced to pay $600,000 in damages, which is about $11 million today. It was a huge win for the common people against the giant corporation. Because of the Great Molasses Flood, laws were changed across America. Before this, anyone could build anything. After this, states began requiring that architects and engineers sign off on plans. It birthed the modern system of professional engineering licenses. So, the next time you walk into a building and it doesn't collapse, you can actually thank the lessons learned from this sticky tragedy. There is a local legend in the North End that persists even today. Old residents used to say that for decades after the flood, on hot summer days when the humidity was high, the streets would still smell faintly of sweet, burnt maple syrup. It was a ghostly reminder of the past. This story is a powerful reminder that cheap work equals big danger. It is a motivational story in a way, motivating us to value safety and integrity over quick profits. If you found this story fascinating, please hit that like button. It helps us share these hidden pieces of history with more people. And for more incredible true stories that sound like fiction, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. This is HappySource Stories, signing off.